Welcome back to A Bite from the Money Sandwich, where we provide practical and easy to understand tips and ideas on how to manage your money better so as to let you retire with comfort and on your own terms. When people think of what your average financial planner does for you, it's probably organising your super, investments and insurance. Tim Henry, our guest today, sees his role as more than that, and even in the name of his business, Aspire Planning, and his podcast, The Grass is Greener. He wants to not only help and educate his clients, but inspire them to have purpose, especially in retirement, and have fun along the way. So looking forward to having Tim on our show today to hear his thoughts and some tips to help with your money and finances. Well, welcome, Tim, to our podcast. How are you going?
Oh, I'm good, Mark. How are you?
Well, yes. We might even hear in the background a storm is about to hit here in Sydney, so we'll see how bad it is. It's been hailing a little bit upstate, so we'll see how we go.
Join in sync here because I reckon we're not far off it here in Melbourne. So there you go.
Well, we'll see how it affects the podcast.
Beautiful.
I really appreciate you coming on the show because you are a financial advisor I've known for a fair while. And it's something I do want to ask. I like asking financial advisors. Why did they become one? Did you sometimes fall into it. But what's your background on that?
Well, it was an interesting background because I had worked in finance and I'd studied banking and finance. I always had a vision, or when I was a younger person, that I wanted to be a foreign exchange trader, and it was only because I just worked in the bank and all that sort of thing, and I thought I'll study it, and it looked really cool. But when I actually got closer to it, it actually looked really boring and I spoke to a couple of guys who were traders, and they said, well, yeah, we don't really get a lot of autonomy. We just get told what we have to do every day. Like the analysts work overnight and we just got to follow that script, and it wasn't exciting as what I thought. Anyway, I had a little bit of a detour off into retail, and when I say retail, I mean real retail with Myer, and I worked as a financial planner. Effectively, they called them analyst planners, and we worked with the buyers to help the buyers get the best deal for their ranges and that sort of thing. And I think by the time I did a dozen years doing that, and you really focused on, what do consumers need, and you're always thinking about the consumers. My uncle was doing financial planning, and the light bulb moment went off where it's like, well, I've got the financial skills, and I've been looking at customers' needs for so long. It's like this is going to marry up beautifully, and I was sick of corporate life at that stage, and so I started studying and got the right accreditation and got qualified and went into a business. It's been great. I love it.
Yeah, it's and you said something quite interesting there, that you had the technical knowledge, and even when you sort of upskilled once you started, but you actually understood the customer needs.
Yeah.
And I think you probably agree that you're seeing a lot of financial advisors coming out of university. They've got all the technical knowledge, but they just don't understand. They don't even know how to actually sit down in front of someone and have a conversation.
Yeah, and I think as well a bit of life experience too.
Sure.
That's something. But we're even one of the guys that in our team, he's close to becoming an advisor, and he's really, really smart guy, Leandro, and it's done a lot of hard work for us. But through the coaching, I think the professional year is a great idea, because I think he's now getting the insights into some of the conversations we have in the meeting, and he's realizing, there's a lot more to this interaction component than just the knowledge. You can have the knowledge, but it's how you communicate that, and also how you engage with the client so that they're getting what they need out of the meeting too.
Yeah, and I think someone told me years and years ago that, simple but eloquent. And if you're sitting there, if it was your mum sitting in front of you, would she understand what you're talking about? And if she wouldn't, why would these clients? And because they do fall into acronyms and jargon.
Well, probably even from that those retail years, and we had some really great mentors working in retail. We probably learnt that through doing things like catalogs and that sort of thing. Is when you tried to cram too much onto the page about what the offer was about, it got confusing. And I remember particularly these older guys that come up and say to you, "Less is more. Just go with the price, the picture, a couple of lines. That's it." If that doesn't hit them, then the offer's not good enough.
Yeah, makes sense. It's actually it's something I've always really believed in is having a mentor, having a coach.
Yeah.
So you've had you obviously said you had some mentors when you first started out. Do you actually have one that's been a mentor the whole way through, or do you just have had different mentors over the period?
Oh, yeah, probably different. Certainly back in those retail days, I had one mentor in particular who he's just a very he was one of the buyers that I worked with, just a really, really smart guy about how to create an offer and how to communicate that to consumers and that sort of thing. And he himself would say, I taught him a lot about the detail and the finances and all that sort of stuff. So we were a good team in that way. But yeah, I think you sort of come into different aspects of your life sometimes. And when you work with people that have such an instinctive knowledge on something, you realize, oh, I've got a lot to learn. Sometimes you might come in and think, well, I know what's going on here. You spend a bit of time with people like a mentor, and it's like you start realizing what you don't know. It's quite huge.
It's quite huge, exactly.
So it's great. It's a great, I think everyone needs some sort of mentor, don't they?
Yeah, I think, absolutely, for business, for work, to grow, to always have someone who you can just bounce ideas off. But I actually just think in life now, I just think there's a lot of people, you just need someone who's, as you said, got a few runs on the board, bit of life experience, and has been there. So, you don't have to basically reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. And I think as well that the thought process of a mentor, and instantly you'd think would be someone that's older than you, that's got more experience, but that doesn't have to be the case. It can be just someone that could be younger than you who just is really skilled at a certain thing that you're a bit weak in, and they can really teach you so much.
Yeah. So now you've become a financial advisor, and one of the reasons I was keen to ask you on to the show was that you're not your typical financial advisor. Let's just put it that way. Tim, you've got the podcast, The Grass is Greener, and we'll talk about that. But one of the things is just even in your day-to-day, is it Aspire or Aspire Financial? I suppose it's Aspire.
Well, I called it Aspire Planning because I wanted to knock out the word financial. So
okay,
there you go.
So Aspire Planning. Okay, right. It's really is aspirational in what you're trying to do. And it's not just obviously someone's money, super, insurance. It's more than that. Do you want to talk a bit about how your processes?
Well, yeah. Well, I think the idea for just calling it Aspire Planning and making it aspirational is, I really feel strongly about this, is that I don't really feel that people need motivation for something. If they've got a strong enough vision or feeling about what they want to do, they're really going to have that'll be the motivation enough. And I think when I first started in financial advice, I saw we were doing a lot of great plans for people, but I didn't always feel like they were that emotionally invested in the plans. Like you could tell it would help them. I didn't really always feel like they realised how much we'd help them. And it just, after a number of years, so we need to try and change this up a bit. And if we could create a process where people are becoming far more engaged in what they're wanting to achieve, and we're really then playing the secondary role as providing those vehicles, then they're going to be excited about that, what we're doing for them, because they're really emotionally invested in it. And so that's what we've really set out to try and achieve in our business, is to set up processes that create that. It hasn't always been easy, but but that's what we've tried to do.
I think I think that's really, that really resonates with me, because I know when you talk to people, and you can just see it in their faces, can't you?
Yeah.
That, oh, well, we're going to help you pay off your mortgage, or we're going to help you have enough in your super, or get you but really what they're desperate for is in a certain period of time to go to Machu Picchu.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what
right.
it's something that you can get emotionally invested in. Okay, if we get you to help you to get a plan to that, as well as all the other stuff,
Yeah.
because it is important. You need to, as you said, get people emotionally involved.
And I think sometimes if the feeling like, and I wonder often whether that might be one of the limiting beliefs for people to come and seek financial advice, is they're going to think, well, these guys are just going to close off anything that's fun and tell me I need to be responsible. And so I think what we're trying to say is, well, have it all. Like, actually work out what you want to do. Let's put in plans to do that. And along the way, if you're having fun and you being semi-responsible behind that as well, then surely you're having a great time.
Yeah. And there is a few negative connotations around things like budgeting, even retirement, people say, well, I enjoy work. Why do I need to have retired just because I'm now 65 or such? So let's go down that a little bit more. I know you have this retirement readiness quiz that I actually, you were kind enough to let me go through it, and I found it really engaging and really informative. So yes, if you tell us a bit more about that, Tim.
Yeah, well, we've done a couple of programs in our business that to try and help, I guess, with this vision, because we can create the financial strategies, but we found, people are coming in, sometimes they're so busy or overworked or overwhelmed. They're sort of coming in with a blank canvas saying, well, I don't really know what I want to do yet.
Sure.
So we needed to inspire them in some way. And so we did create a program called the Dreamcatcher program. That's more of a life vision program. And maybe it's a little bit tailored to the younger cohort of our clients. And then I met through this process a lady by the name of Natalie Yanchatonsky. She runs a business called Full Time Lives in Sydney, and she runs programs for people who are transitioning from full-time working into what she calls full-time living. She refuses to call it retirement. And she studied many people, hundreds of people, and interviewed them and asked them questions about what worked when you retired, what didn't work. For some people, their initial crack at retirement was a failure. They fell in a hole. And she started to piece together the things that seemed to be the keys to success. And so she created a program around that. And that program starts with that retirement readiness quiz. And what she really built was that there's 6 areas transitioning into retirement that you really got to start thinking about. And if you've got good plans or you're working on those areas, you're probably going to have a nice, smooth transition into retirement. If you're lacking in some of those areas, you could be headed for a little bit of a brick wall once you retire, or fall in a bit of a hole in that area. So the retirement readiness quiz that we send to our clients really just gives them a score in those areas. And the areas are, do you want me to go through the areas?
Sure, yeah.
Oh, well, they're of interest, I think, because it has come with such, it's not just like she plucked those areas out of her hat. She did it off a lot of research and consumer consultation. The 5 areas actually are purpose. So understanding what makes you feel valued and fulfilled. Vitality. So living better and longer by improving your mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. And I think as you go through these, you're sort of imagining, I quite often imagine someone, they've got their family sort of grown up. They've probably worked really hard, maybe sacrificed a bit of their own life in that. And some of this is piecing together, getting reconnected back into your own life, isn't it? Community is a big one, and she puts a lot of emphasis on that, because she says particularly guys could be guilty of extracting themselves from the community if they're working really hard. And so they've got to reconnect before they retire.
Yeah, I can just on that, because that's something I really learned by doing your quiz. My four were always, of course, there is the financial, but health, what's your new challenges, and your relationships. But she brought in community, and not just your own community, but how are you going to go out and help the community? And two people I've actually interviewed who have retired, and both have exactly said that they got back into their community, and really it's meant a lot to them.
Yeah. Well, that does feed back into purpose as well, because through the process of doing these programs with our clients, and I must say I don't run them, but we've worked with people who do run them, and they're really skilled in these areas. But one of the things that I've learned about purpose is that we are naturally wired to get fulfillment from helping others. And so there was a great video I watched recently where it was a marathon runner. She was running in the Boston Marathon, and now she was in the elite group that was trying to win it. And she decided, the marathon's 42 Ks, and 7 Ks in, she was saying to herself, I don't know what's wrong today, but it's not going to be my day. Legs are gone. I'm not feeling good. And so she had a mate that was in this lead group too, and it's obviously hard to drink and run so hard and all that. So she said, I'll run alongside, and I'll help her out for another 10 Ks and give her some drinks and that. And through that period, she came good. She ended up winning.
Wow.
Because once her mind went off herself and she was focused on the other person, her purpose, she started feeling better. So, it's really just about we're naturally wired to help other people. So the community element is really important, I think. The wealth is a big one, and obviously that's one that we've always played a role in, Mark, making your money go as far as it needs. And I think when a lot of this retirement readiness is, there can be a lot of stress around that, can't there? If people are feeling like they haven't got enough.
Especially the 10, 15 years out. And a lot of people, and it's a real common theme that people say, well, I've been paying off a mortgage, I've been helping the kids get through school, but now they've left school. And I just realized, well, actually retirement is around the corner, and I haven't really put a lot of effort into that. But that's probably it is an important point, but it is actually an important myth, because people don't realize with just a little bit of tweaking, you can really get your money working harder for you.
Yeah, in a hurry.
In a hurry.
And I often wonder as well whether it's a bit of a reckoning of letting go of the past if they feel like there's a few mistakes they made along the way. There's no point dwelling on those now. What can we do for the future? And as you say, don't underestimate what you can do. I also do think I often feel, do you feel this, that when people are feeling in control of that financial, they can probably enjoy the last few years of work because they're working probably for their own purpose. When they're feeling like they have to work for that financial reason, they might become a bit bitter about their work, that they have to do it.
Yeah, there's nothing like working because you want to rather than being forced to. And I know even people who do get to, say, standard, it is just a figure, but say 65, and they say, I should retire. Well, no, if they're still enjoying work, they just may want to do it a little bit slower, but at least they've got the luxury, as you said, they're working because they want to rather than being forced to. Yeah. And
then the last one is lifelong learning. And this is a big one too. I've read a book recently called The 100-Year Life. I don't know if you've heard of that. No. It's a really great book. And it's actually written by financial people who also went down this path about looking at, what are the ingredients you need for a really long, healthy and connected life. And the lifelong learning was a big one too, not stopping stimulating your brain through learning and new experiences. And I think there can be a tendency for people once they finish working to think, well, there's no point me learning that. There's no point me learning that. And, as technology changes and the world changes, if you disconnect from that, then sort of disconnecting from the world.
Yeah, I think I must admit I came to that late because I thought the studies, because I was an engineer before I became a financial advisor, and there was a point where I just said I'm sick of study.
Yeah.
But I have definitely come around to, well, it's education isn't just what you're doing for a job.
Yeah.
It's learning a language. It's go see a museum. And
That's
I
right.
have been seeing this, reading about this person who actually did an article on it recently, who this financial advisor in America, and he studied all these millionaires and also studied people who are in lower socioeconomic situation. And he said, if you wanted to do it in one sentence, the people who were, the majority of people who were well off had huge libraries and small TVs, and people in lower socioeconomic in the majority had large TVs and small libraries. And I just thought, it says it all, I suppose. Yeah,
it does. Yeah. And I sort of think learning can be anything. I mean, I know my mum, she's fantastically vibrant. She's really during COVID, where she's been totally bored, she's really got right into the family history, and the technology that's available for that now is amazing. And even through your own library database and all that sort of thing, the local library. And she's doing all that through technology as well. So through that curiosity of wanting to learn, she's learning new skills in that. And she was showing me, I was blown away. So I think it's just those sorts of things, and probably curiosity comes in there, doesn't it?
Yeah. And, my family didn't grow up with a lot of money, but my parents absolutely instilled into me that I was going to read. And we never stopped going to museums or galleries. And I'm thinking, all my mates are going to the football, Dad. Why are we going to an art gallery? But looking back on it now, it was just the greatest education. It was really helpful. And I just think, encourage anyone to read.
Yeah, and I really feel that what I've loved about using that retirement readiness calculator or quiz is that as financial advisors, look, we're not experts in helping people in those areas necessarily, but it's starting a conversation, and it's really then for them to reflect back and say, well, I want to do some work in this area and this, and then all of a sudden you're starting to pick up on all these different deeper aspects, if you like, about what our clients are trying to achieve. And obviously then we can come in behind with the wealth element. And if they can be in control of those areas and be inspired to go and live a great life, and we can fulfill the fact that they can enable them to do that, then it seems like a pretty good combo, don't you think?
Oh, brilliant. And how good is that? So I'll put a link to that retirement readiness quiz if you don't mind, because I just think anyone should have a look at it.
It's just for it.
I just found it really helpful. Like all I've been doing the last 10 years is helping people retire and look at this. And so I am very interested. And this is something I've never seen before. So I do recommend it.
Yeah, great.
So one of the things the reasons I started the podcast and the website and book was we are very limited as advisors to how many people you can help. And so trying to help more, or trying to help the many, as I say, was one of the reasons I was going to do this. And that was also one of the reasons for the podcast. Was that your thinking around your podcast, or what was the reason you decided, yep, this is for me?
Well, by the way, I've started the book and I love it. It's good. Well, I think what I have loved about it is exactly what you're saying. It's honing in on the important aspects, but not overcomplicating it. Just keeping it really, really vital. It's really excellent.
Oh, good.
But yeah, with our podcast, I was a little bit the same in that it was probably driven by our own client base more than anything, because we get such little time with people really in the scheme of a year. We have an annual meeting for 90 minutes. We might have had a couple of other conversations throughout the year. Max 2 hours, max 2.5 hours you're probably spending with people. We do send out articles and that sort of thing, and maybe that's a help to some people. But so throughout that time, you're coming across information that you think, oh, what a great presentation that guy just gave. What a shame I can't share that with the people that I look after or whatever. So the podcast just seemed like a great avenue. And more people were saying that they were listening to podcasts. And I thought, well, we could actually start to structure the things that we want to talk about. We get a relevant guest on. And I think what I've really learnt from the podcast itself is when people are able to listen to information in their own time when they're ready, they definitely absorb a lot more, even compared to when they might be in the room with us, because we might be in the room for 90 minutes talking. Now we've unloaded a lot of information in that meeting. How much of it sticks immediately? Compared to, I've had people come back to me and say, "Oh, that was great about that podcast on super, for example. I really learnt a lot." And it really does make you think, because you think, well, most of those concepts we've been covering with you for many years in our meetings, but there's something different about the fact that they were able to listen in their time and take on the information.
Yeah, no, I think you make some really good points there. I just think we are very lucky as an industry and a profession that, we get to hear some amazing speakers.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to go to some conferences overseas, and I just thought that, why it would be wonderful if my clients or people I know could hear from these, and podcast is a good way. I hadn't actually thought it from that point of view, but being able to have those, and they can also listen to it at any time they want. Yeah. So
that's what I mean. Yeah. So when they're in a good headspace to listen, and we've all had the client meeting where, the one that it's even been interesting with COVID, I think, because we're doing so many more virtual meetings. And I compare it to, say, a meeting that could be pre-COVID at 4:00 in the afternoon. Both husband and wife are coming from work. One's stuck in traffic. The other one's getting irritable that the other one's late. They're looking at their watch because they've got to pick up their kids from footy training at 5:30, and how long does this meeting going to go for? And the whole thing's just not always a great environment. Whereas I've even noticed in the virtual setting, they're both at home or they're virtually coming in. Everyone's more relaxed. And so the podcast is a similar thing. When you can do it on your own time and be relaxed, it's probably a great way to absorb info.
Yeah. I just think it's just, well done, because we do need, as a profession, to think differently. We do need to be able to get the messages out differently. And podcast, if people are listening to podcasts, well, why wouldn't you take advantage of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go on.
Oh, I think the other thing I was just going to say is it hasn't always been easy. We've just described that aspirational and putting the aspirational out there with the financial. And I know that with some people we've dealt with over the years, and when we try and explain that, you can sort of see them running through their head saying, well, you're just a financial person, so why are you talking about this other stuff? And I think the podcast as well, is because we jump back and forward between the two quite often. I think that as well is starting to paint a picture for people to say, oh, I can now understand how all these things are interacting. And because it's a bit of a, again, it's more relaxed. Episode after episode just builds on the other ones. So yeah, it's I think it's good for talking about bigger concepts.
Yeah, and I think, and I understand, some clients just say, well, you're here for the financial, just look after my investments or get my super organized. But really, we're not doing our job properly if we already know that, by the time at the 65, yes, financially they're okay, but they're just not ready.
Yeah.
I've seen in my own family, just my father-in-law he just should have worked to the day he died, but he just saw, no, I was told at such and such age, I've got to stop. And he just was lost financially fine.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law, on the opposite, had joined every social group and absolutely had a ball. Retirement was perfect. So having that type of conversation with your clients, while they may not understand why, I think, as you said, the podcast, that's a great way just for them to get that light bulb moment. Oh, okay, now I know why he's talking about that.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, one of the things I like to do is, especially as a financial advisor, and you're helping clients every day, is you would have reoccurring things or tips that you find and help you for clients.
Yeah.
I've asked you if you wouldn't mind preparing 3 tips, and we'll go from, say, your third to your top. Would you mind, telling us
great.
What tips you have?
Well, you already touched on one of them earlier, which was great. Great work there, Mark, that you brought that in. But the third one, I was going to just mention the word budget, and I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding of the word budget. When people hear the word budget, they think restraint. I think even someone described it as, if you describe it as an adjective, it's like a second-rate sort of cheap. It's a budget item. And I just say to people, it's nothing more than an estimate of your spending. So just think of it as that. And I quite often say to people too is, rather than thinking of it as a restrictive thing, what I'd love you to do is put down your hand on heart. If I spend what's in that budget, I really don't need to spend any. I shouldn't need to spend any more. We want that number that if you overspend to that, you've really gone over. And for people to think of their budget as something they're in control of. If they want to spend the money, spend the money. All we'll spit out the other end is, does that still work to your bigger plan or not? If it doesn't, then it's going to require you to make some choices. So I think I often think budget, people think, it means I have to cut back. But I just think all it really is just an estimate for you to keep track on.
Yeah, I've had people say, you're just taking the fun out of life. That's a bit drastic, but I think you said the word control, and I think that's the key. Most people who have struggling saving or having any money, or they're living paycheck to paycheck, it's because they just don't know what they're spending their money on. And that's all this budgeting or writing down, categorizing where your spending is just letting you know where your money's going. And it just, so many surprise faces when people say, I just didn't realize I spent this much on Uber Eats, for example.
Yeah, that's right.
Going to the movies, and at least you can then make informed decisions. And you can say, I don't want to do any of that, or don't want to make any cutbacks, but you at least know what you're spending your money on. Yeah.
And I think what I love about the budget is for people to really be at peace with that budget, not be feeling like they're sacrificing too much for themselves. You've got to be at peace with it. And if our analysis says that to live that life, you just need to work 2 years longer, some people would sign up for that.
Yeah. Well, and at least it's their decision. And
that's right.
And if it's too restrictive, they're not going to stick to it anyway. So
no, I agree. So that was really, So number 2 probably plays into what we've talked about a lot. Is I think before a lot of people would come to us saying, "Tell me what to do. What's the best investment and all that sort of thing." I would just say number 2 is get clear on your vision before you do anything else. To work out what is going to make you happy in life, what you're setting out to achieve, because you can take the shortcut and skip past the why. So let's call it the why, what, how, and when. You can skip past a couple of those and just jump straight into how and when. But you're gonna keep running into barriers because you haven't done the work. If you start with what you really want to achieve and why it's going to make you happy, I think the vehicles will start to select themselves, and you'll start to work out what you need to do to get there.
Yeah. You said before, you have to have an emotional attachment to actually really ensure you're going to achieve something. And the why for anything is really important.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you set up for your clients the goals, they're just obvious, then they're just not the financial, it's life goals as well then.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
so we're really saying that this is like one big package here. And for you to do all of that, the money side we can take care of, but
Mhm.
there's other things you might need to do to achieve this, that bit work you need to put in. Because don't you feel, I often feel like this, sometimes people come into us expecting we've got the secret manual that gives them all the answers to everything in their life. And it's like, well, this is your manual to write, not mine. I can give you some financial tips, but it's your gig.
Yeah, no, it's very true. The financial side is our bread and butter. So absolutely, we can help that. But it's, if you're not going to take an investment in your own investment into this, it's never going to work. So yeah, no, it's important. So no, I'm glad you do that, because I think it is the right way. And I think far more advisors would build better relationships with their clients if they thought that way too. So, yeah.
And I think if the average person starts with that, it doesn't take them long to really, they know what they want to do, what's going to make them happy. As you said, it's that dreaming of that trip or whatever. And once you start saying, yeah, well, that's what I really want to do, it's like, well, let's do it.
Yep. Great. And the drum roll, your number one tip, Tim.
Number one tip, well, start now is the number one tip. I think we're all guilty in life at times, and particularly with what your theme is, Mark, with coming into those transition years into retirement. There can be a bit of a, I probably should start looking at this. I'll look at it in a few years. I'll look at it next year or whatever. You said it before, there's so much, you can make such an impact in just a few years. Yes. So if I normally say to other financial advisors, what would be the perfect time for people to turn up to plan their retirement? Most would say, oh, if I had 10 years, gee, what I could do with them. We know that if they turn up and they've only got 3 years to go, we can still make some big impacts, but not as good as 10. So I just say, start now. That's probably the biggest tip.
Yeah, in the book, I call it the 1 day myth, because it is something that people come in and say, oh, I've been meaning to come in and see you for the last 5 years, 10 years. But you're here now. That's all that counts. Yeah. You're here now and we can actually do something. So no, I think that's a really good tip. Yeah, if you're going to act, and it's not that far off Christmas and New Year's resolutions. I think people having a New Year's resolution, and I think not just having a New Year's resolution of actually, I'm going to do something, get someone to help you stay accountable, which is what financial advisors are great at. You may get a goal, you may have a plan, but unless someone's going to keep you on that, which is, we were talking before about mentors, coaches, it's advisors, it's similar. You just need someone you can talk to, who can make sure every 6 months, every year, is just going to make sure you're being held accountable and stay on track to get that goal.
Yeah. And I think, as really just put the whatever limitation there is that's the barrier behind you, and just say, I'm just going to do it. And in fact, I'd even say with the New Year's resolution, okay, well, that's great if you decide next year that you're going to do that for sure, and that's your resolution. But how much even better would you feel if you had it nailed by Christmas?
Yeah, true.
And you'd started something and you had the excitement factor to look forward to next year.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, Tim. I had a half a dozen more questions I wanted to ask you. It's just enjoyable.
I'll talk too long.
So I will just ask one last question that we ask all our guests. It's our final bite. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Well, that's a really great. You stumped me there. Was I ready for that? What's the best piece of advice I've received? Look, to be honest, I'm going to say it's from my dad. I go back to a specific time in my life where I was under 30, and I had these plans that I was planning to take off overseas and all that sort of thing. And I got this big promotion offer at work, and I knew I was going to leave later in the year. I hadn't told work this yet, in about 6 months. It was a big pay rise, but I also knew that they were going to spend probably the 6 months training me, and I was going to leave. And I had this real quandary, and I said, it'd be great on my CV as well. And I sat down with my dad and just said, I just don't know what to do. And he said, you just got to do the right ethical thing and tell them you would have loved to take the job, but what your plans are and why you wouldn't. And it was just a great ethical piece of advice from him. And later on, when I did I did my trip overseas, and then I came back to Melbourne, I went to a job interview, got a great offer for a job, and they wanted a reference, and I gave that guy who I'd told, and he gave me the most glowing reference. And they said, we've never heard such a glowing reference. And it was because I'd done the right thing. And that was just a great piece of advice that my dad gave me at the time, because I was really tempted to take the money and get that job on the CV.
Tim, that's a great piece of advice, and for thinking on the spot, that's exceptional. It's been really good having you on the show, and I'm sure the people who are listening have got a lot out of it. And just thanks again for being on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm really enjoying the show, so thanks. It's good.
Okay, bye-bye.
I hope you found that of interest, especially those contemplating retirement and seeing that retirement is more than just the numbers, as we need to know what our purpose and next big challenge will be, and the earlier we think about it, the better. If you would like to try Tim's retirement quiz, please log on to aspireplanning.com.au. Want more practical, easy to understand tips and action lists to help with your money stuff? Buy my book, The Money Sandwich, available now on our website, themoneysandwich.com, as well as major online retailers. As with every podcast, this information is not advice, as not personalised to your own situation, and past performance is never guaranteed for the future. What we are trying to do here is provide tips, coaching, and education to help improve your money knowledge, which we believe can only be a good thing. See you next time when we take another bite from the Money Sandwich.